you've been doing some more on the game development.
Yeah.
I know. So do you want to give us, well, do we start working on this, or how are you feeling now? The other dilemma that I've got, that I've been thinking a little bit about over the last few days, I actually downloaded QBasic onto my computer, but it wasn't running, because I thought, where do we start? Because I think we're actually probably at a point where we can actually cut code. Yes, look at that excited face. Which is, it does sound intimidating, I imagine. But as I said to you the other day when we had a little bit of a chat, no one's going to die.
Yeah. Nothing's going to explode.
And it's not going to kill your computer, and it's not going to. So the worst I've ever had, and I was not working in Python, I was working in C++, and I wrote to memory that hadn't been assigned. I overwrote a buffer more than once. And I had a seg fault, and lo and behold, I had a seg fault, and it rebooted my computer. And I hadn't saved everything, and so the worst case was I lost a bit. So right. It sounds kind of, oh my gosh, we're programming, but really, what's at stake? Yeah. You can,
and I've had that sort of thing happen to me just editing videos. Yeah. So, you know,
and you can waste a lot of time trying to do it. And maybe the worst thing is you can give yourself a stroke because you get so angry because it doesn't work. Or a heart attack or something. But if you keep your brain in the right place, and the worst, if you really get into that point, it's time to walk away from the computer, because you're not going to solve the problem. So go and kick something outside. You've got a few siblings. I think some of them are. Kick
one of them.
They've moved back in because of the COVID thing, and so hence our separate houses. So yeah, kick one of them. Say I said it was okay. I'm sure that
perfect.
They'll accept that.
I have permission from Uncle Graham, so.
Well, not only permission,
encouragement.
You've been instructed.
Yeah.
So, and they'll believe you because they know me.
That's true.
They'll accept it. So, start with the ones that can hurt you the least, if they decide to.
So Ray wouldn't.
That's right. Take one. I was thinking that would have been a place to start.
Yeah.
She'd look very sad and go, "Oh, why?" Whereas Reese might clouch her. Anyway, and he's got swords.
Yeah, that's true.
So, anyway, so not too. There's not much at stake. So if you keep it in your head that that's the case, and our worst outcome is you don't get it to work. You've already learned a bit, and sorry. And from what you've said, you've seen the stuff that we've talked about being informative in other places too, in ways that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
So that's
in arguments about amphibians versus arachnids.
Oh, am I familiar with that?
Probably not. Things got very silly on the Discord and someone made a really funny binary joke.
Oh.
And, I got it. I understood the reference.
So there you go.
Yeah.
One thing we won't have to worry about is going above the top of our piece of paper screen.
That's true.
That's it. Oh, it's reversed. Anyway. So the dilemma I have, though, is how best to go ahead with this. Now, one way of doing it would be we start with, I was thinking about getting QBasic running, and you write a few write a hello world program and have it, and you show that you can have line numbers, the old programming. The first bit of code I ever wrote, and in fact, even today in G code on CNC machines where you're machining, you have line numbers. And so typically you start with 10, 20, 30, 40, because what happens is you go back and you go, oh no, I should have done this. So you've got gaps between, so you can chuck in 15 if you need to shove something between 10 and 20. I actually wrote programs to renumber programs. So you get these ones that have all these oddball wits in front, and I just wrote a little bit of code. This is for G code when I was working as a machinist, that would just refactor it to every 10. But so you start at the top and you go, if it's a piece of computer, if it's controlling a machine, it starts off with saying you want to work in absolute mode, so your coordinates are moving absolutely, and you want to use this tool and you want to have it at this start position, and then you go into the next line and you tell it, to move this tool to this start point, and then to run around an arc like that and along. And each line, there's N 10, 20, 30, and you describe where you want the tool to go. And so in principle, it's exactly the same with whatever you're doing. I mean, whether you're telling a tool to move from here to here, or you're telling it to get input from a user and then write something out to the screen and then, read a file or whatever, you could go line, right? And then the early code, it had go-tos. Now, go-tos they're the makers of spaghetti.
Right.
And they have become, there's two things. If you're using globals and you're using go-tos, the world of programmers will spurn you. They will treat you as unclean. And I kind of in Visual Basic, when I was doing a certain thing in Visual Basic that really the language didn't support the good way of doing it, I sullied with a global variable, and every time I looked at it, I kind of felt dirty.
How could you?
But I have written code with go-tos because that was right at the beginning. Actually, my very first actual crack at programming, there it is.
Hey, there you go.
I bought that, well, it's got to be 25 years ago. And, I learned to write, and you can see, little examples of basic code there.
Mm-hmm.
And the input there, it's not focusing on, but the input there, other way, says, you type something and it reads it in, and it gives it a prompt. And, so I started with this book, and I actually wrote a surprising amount from what I learned out of there. Of course, I'll cut this out while I put this back in. Power of edit. It did end up with, much more effective C++ and artificial intelligence, the C++ standard library, problem solving, abstraction and design in C++. Yeah, it got a little bit more serious.
Right.
But it started off with that.
And I imagine that go-tos are things that say, like, go to line 32 or whatever.
Yeah, not if you've refactored it, but yeah. You're going to have 32 because you're doing it in blocks of 10.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Go to line 40, but line 40 could change. Yeah. Right? Like,
yeah. And so if you then refactor, then you've got to go and find all your go-tos and then find what the line number changed from. If you had a 15 and then you refactored, then you end up going to the and maybe a non-existent line, and you get an error and it crashes, and you go, why did that crash? And it's, you know, so there's a good reason not to use go-tos.
Gotcha.
But that's where, you know, when you first start, that's where your head kind of feels most comfortable. So do I get you to try and write something using Python in a really straight, you know, down the line way that is the functional kind of way of programming, so that you can see how it breaks over time, and then we rewrite it? I mean, and I can show you a little bit of, you know, I'll show you the basics in a real simple little script. But, or do I go for what I think is good design right from the start, and you try to comprehend the...
Well, I think I know what my preference is. So and it's just because when we first started talking about this, like before we decided that it would make a good series even, we had that conversation where you talked about, you know, top down versus the other one.
Object oriented.
Yeah, object oriented. Thank you so much. The object oriented, and what was it? Was the other one called top down decomposition? Top down
functional decomposition.
That one, right? And talking about that, I feel like I saw a lot of stuff that I had previously done in the top down functional decompositional that you discussed, and so I feel like I kind of already, in very small ways, I mean, it's never been like a script that runs, right? It's always been in the sense of like formatting style coding, but I have done that sort of a thing in the past. So I feel like I kind of have a basic understanding of how that works and how it gets tricky and all those sorts of things. Like even just, I mean, you probably haven't seen it, but for one of my D&D things, I made a document that's just this big sort of reference sort of document where you can look up sort of herbs and things, that it's sort of broken up into different tables and whatever. And so just the formatting of that ended up being, you know, however many hundreds of pages of stuff. And so, you know, going through and finding a broken link, I feel like would be a similar thing to finding out why a program is crashing. So I personally am like, let's do the other thing instead of the...
Right. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you have a preference. And because, I mean, I honestly was maybe this, maybe that in. And so, yeah, I'm glad that that you've expressed a preference. And let's see how we go.
Yeah.
Like if we start this and it works, and you can see what we're doing, then we don't have to go. And then the other thing is that, as I said, when you're writing object-oriented code, you also use procedural code.
Yeah.
You made the comment that, you know, oh, hang on, there's verbs. Yeah, well, of course there's verbs.
Yeah.
Because a program has to do something. At some point, you have to use a verb. So it's how do we structure it? Now, I will share the screen. So this is a Python. Now, actually, I will also, if we go, this is GitHub. And this is my GitHub page. That's the stuff I was showing off to you a moment ago. This is one of my nice photos I took.
Oh, ooh la la.
And so I have set up a repository on GitHub. So what I've done, this is GitHub, and it's just a cloud. You've maybe heard of it, but it's a cloud-based repository. And I've got, you know, 12. I've got 12 projects, repositories, and because I've got an academic license, I can have private repositories as opposed to private suppositories.
I would hope that all suppositories would be private.
Well, anyway, FTI status. There we go. And I need to go to the master branch. So this is code, and I can see straight away that here I've had 30 commits, and the last one was 5 days ago, which reminds me I should commit my
What's a commit?
Over the last day. But basically, when you get to a certain point in your code where you go, that's working, you go, yep, I'm going to upload that. But I can see here that there are 30 commits, and here they all are. And it's going
So it's like a save, but it saves different versions of it?
Yeah, and they're all the way through. And if I click on here, it'll come in and it actually shows me all the things that changed between the last one and the previous, like the one of that one and the previous one. So if I go here and I go notification now sending emails, and it comes in here and you can see I've added all the green stuff and I've removed all the red stuff. And that's all the extra code that I put in between those commits. So I can go right back to the very beginning of my program, and it starts back here, first commit, trying to push initial file, now storing data into a body variable, now starting to load values I want into variables, now writing CSV file. And so you just, when you go to commit, you just write a little message and commit. And this interface, which is Visual Studio Code, has got source control, and you can just, it's all hooked up. So I've got this all hooked up, so it's verified back to my cloud. So I just type a message here, and as I do anything, it logs the changes here, and I can just click on them and it'll do a split window on my screen. Like it'll split this screen here and show me what I've changed from this.
It'll do the comparison.
Since the last commit. And so I just go in here. So I've set up a project for your program, and I will share that with you. And ultimately, when we get it to a point where we're happy to, we'll be able to make that project public. Yeah. And people can just use, they get a Git account. You're going to have to get a GitHub account, which you can for free, and everything you need to do, you'll be able to get for free. And other people can just, with Git, they can go Git clone, and there's an identifier for that program. So there's an identifier. And if I go back to here, go back to master, there's code, and you can just copy this. And if it's a public domain, into Git, like on a command line or whatever, and you can use a Git interface as well. But you can just do that, and it'll pull all the code that you've got on this repository, all will come down. And so they've just got all the software on their computer. So when it gets to a point, if people are interested in having it, they can get this, and initially they can just get our code base, and they can add anything they like. Now, I've not done this because I'm a lonely programmer who works by myself. I've never worked as part of a team.
Lone wolf.
Yeah, there's not other programmers in the place I work, and I've never worked in a place where I've done that. I have done collaborative work, but not when GitHub was around. But you can pull. So if I'm working on it, and then you go to do something, you can just pull, and it'll update all your stuff that's on your computer to the state that it's up to with my last commit. And then you can push, and then I can do a pull, and I can get your code, just click, 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 and we can just keep our project in sync.
Neat.
But also it means that if we open this up and we allow it, other people who want to join in could contribute to the program. But when they submit, as the owner of the program, I would be shown what they're offering, and I can choose to accept it or not. And there's all this stuff about branches and forks, and you can have a development fork or branch that goes off, and you can do all that stuff, and the main source stays where it is. And then when you get to a point where you're happy with the new one, you can merge it back in and make that the main release and whatever. Now, I haven't had to do that because I'm a lone wolf again, and I just deploy my own code. But it'd be interesting to, and I'm sure that there are people out there, some of whom seem to be watching our videos, who may actually have done all this stuff that I haven't. And we may be able to take advantage of their knowledge.
Yeah, buddy.
Because you've got a fairly large and maybe some of them fairly computery audience. I could potentially get some real benefit from this by being part of a collaborative team. And what's more, then once you've done that, if you get a couple of people that really are keen and know what they're doing, then this game could turn into something way beyond what you imagine. and in reality, you go, well, I could never do that, but no individual can. And the games that you see on a screen when you're playing have been done by teams of sometimes hundreds of people. And this person over here is the expert with security, and this person's the expert on graphics rendering, and this person's the plot development person, and this person's so you're never going to learn enough as a programmer to build that monster program that you look at and go, oh my gosh. I mean, you can do stuff, and there are people that are sole programmers that have done some pretty amazing stuff. But if you look at all the really good stuff, it's done by teams of people who know what they're doing. So if you, through this project, connect with other people that are part of that world, you get a chance to learn off people other than me who know stuff that I don't and have done a lot more than me through collaboration. And you can be part of, and maybe you have, I think it's really good that you get a basic understanding of what's going on and how it works, and do some, but maybe your role is more in creation of scenarios and so forth. And if this turns into something bigger, are you ever going to learn how to fully animate a, something?
Fully animate? No.
But there are people out there potentially that are going to watch this, or are interested, or fans of yours, or part of your community, who might go, well, actually, I do that, and that might be a fun thing that they might think it's a fun thing to do. So all I'm saying is, by starting with this, first and foremost, I didn't do this straight away with it, and I lost a bit of code, and I went, you idiot, you've got all the stuff here. Why didn't you do that, you fool?
Harsh words.
As I was spending an hour rewriting code that I'd already written, I was not feeling particularly pleased with myself. And I've already got this all set up, and it would have taken minutes to set up a repository and do a commit and not have the thing happen. So this is here. I'm just saying that this is what we're going to be doing, and anything we do here will be being, I've already got this linked. Visual Studio Code. This is, and I don't normally have this font this big. I normally would be
good
down.
though, because my glasses are in the other room.
I would normally be down here, but I watched a thing I did on my solar hot water, and I went, oh man, that's kind of hard to read.
Hard to read.
So we can big in or small. So basically, this is just your file explorer. So like anything, So let's put in a new file and we'll call it test.py, right? And because it's a Python program, there is not a line number, but it's showing line numbers down here because you still use line number references. When you have an error and it prangs, you want to know where in, so it tells you which file and what line number. But we don't actually just go N10, normally it'd be N10, or it could be, some just use 10, G code is N10, and then you got something in N20. We don't need to do that because it's already putting the line numbers here. And you can see, because the yellow squiggly underlines, it's telling you that there's something wrong with that. If it's good syntax, it doesn't have that on it. And that's just telling you that it's not saved.
Okay.
We can split this screen. There's all sorts of stuff. And down here, actually I want to, because I've done another thing, which when this comes in, you can see this has got venv and this one doesn't.
Yes.
I'm going to delete that. I'm using a virtual environment.
Okay.
So what's a virtual environment? So I said to you, how are we going to do this? Let's see how much you can grab and whatever. But I'm doing this in a virtual environment. You can see it ran this script, activate. It's activating this Venn virtual environment. And we're going to need to use libraries to do what we are going to do, because we're not going to write it all ourselves. We're going to take advantage of people that have written stuff and allowed us to use it. And we can just type down here, Pip Uninstall, and I'm going to say we're going to use mat. No, we're not going to use matplotlib. Let's say we're going to use Pandas. All right, and that's a library for working with data. Right, okay. And I go like that, and now it's downloading Pandas, and it's installing it.
Look at it go!
And it's downloading all of the dependencies for Pandas, and now it's installing the packages. It's putting NumPy as well, and there's these Python date util. So it's found all the things it needs to use Pandas, and it's now installing it. Now, what I've done is, by having a virtual environment, this is like saying this is a fresh installation of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go, done. So now we have Pandas. And so now I can go import Pandas as PD is a standard thing, and it's fine.
What does PD stand for?
It's just a name. So we just, if we want to refer to that, we can go PD dot. And now these are all the things that Pandas will let us do.
Oh, so the PD is like Pandas.
Well, PD, so here is the class, the type, right. And here is our instance of it.
Okay.
So we're working with objects. So objects have to be created. So we've got an object Pandas that can do all sorts of things with reading in data, manipulating data, producing plots. You can modify data sets and find all the ones that match this thing and all sorts of stuff. It's all there. You know, there's a pivot table and there's read CSV, read Excel. There's all these read HTML, JSON. There's all these things it can read. There's time delta, lets you add times, and there's time ranges, and you can convert things to date time, and all these things are now available to us because someone else wrote it. And I went pip install, and there it is. And because I'm using because I'm using Visual Studio Code, it gives me all of these look, mouse overs and things like that just let me see what's going on. And it also, you can see import as the purpley color, and Pandas is light green, and PD is dark green, and that's dark green because it's not being used yet.
Okay.
So it's saying, look, no, you're not. So if I go PD, as soon as I type PD,
they both became light green.
They became light green because it's now saying, oh yeah, that's being used.
Right.
So there's all these things that this helps us. Now I'm not sure we will use Pandas. So what do? Pip uninstall Pandas.
The computer just did all that work.
And do I want to proceed? Yes. And now it's uninstalled it.
All right.
So we've got all this stuff that is at our, just you want to do something, you want to connect to the internet, you want to create HTML code, you want to read a file, you want to write a file, you want this, you want that, you want to create plots, there's libraries, and you just go pip install, and there's this huge amount of stuff that's just there. And then you got to work out how to use it. But the thing is that there's just all this stuff is out there, and it's incredibly powerful. But you just got to learn how to kind of get your way around it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the very first program that everyone's supposed to write is Hello World.
Yes, this I have heard.
Done.